Every once in a while, I find myself in the drive-thru at the McDonald's restaurant. It's not good for my cholesterol, I'm told. So I try to be disciplined about buying the meal that I've intended to buy, because they always try to upsell me. Would you like an apple pie with your meal? Would you like a frozen yogurt? A mocha frappuccino? I say no thank you, not today. But catch me in a weak moment, I will say yes to pretty much anything they suggest. Would you like to biggie size your combo? Biggie size has become a verb. I'm biggie sized enough. Meanwhile, the 7-Eleven sells a drink they call the Super Big Gulp. It's 64 ounces of pure, sweet, sugary liquid. Just one of those drinks and you'll have consumed approximately 523 calories and the equivalent of 35 teaspoons of sugar. The typical human bladder reaches its capacity between 16 to 24 ounces. The Super Big Gulp is more than twice the size of the human bladder, which tells us all we need to know about our insatiable need for big things. But this kind of gluttony is par for the course in a society where we derive our worth and meaning from the size of our houses, our cars, our salaries, our stock portfolios. Did you know that when I meet people and they learn that I'm a minister, one of the first questions they ask is, how big is your church? And I say, I don't really know, because I don't really know. Of course, this is important to other ministers as well. When we gather, we ask the same question of one another as if it is the most important thing in the world. We are like kids in the schoolyard, holding our breath so as to appear larger and much more impressive than we really are. But if we take Jesus' teaching in Matthew seriously, perhaps we should question our own convictions. We would be suspicious of people who run the fast food industry. In this day of jumble and multi and mega everything, maybe we should wonder whether God is not engaged in an ensmallment campaign. God thinks in terms of mustard seeds. The mustard seed was a metaphor in Jesus' day for the smallest measurable unit one could think of. To say something was as small as a mustard seed was to say something was as small as you can get, tiny, bordering on insignificance. And Jesus says, that's a pretty good picture of the kingdom. Just a little bit of yeast leavens a large loaf of bread. Jesus started his movement with only 12 disciples, and among them those with dubious credentials. It was a widow who caught Jesus' eye with her offering in the temple amongst all the really flashy religious folks with their acts of devotion. A boy's lunch is more than sufficient to meet the needs of a hungry crowd who come to hear Jesus speak. 5 pieces of bread and 2 fishes. And one day when the disciples wonder who is the greatest in the kingdom of God, Jesus plunks a toddler in diapers in their company and said, this one here, this little child is the greatest in the kingdom of God. Andy Andrews wrote a little book called The Butterfly Effect, which takes its title from a scientific theory that is gaining popularity. It is a theory that states, quote, complex natural systems obey rules, but are so sensitive that small initial changes can cause unexpected final results, thus giving an impression of randomness. The idea is that a small change, such as a butterfly's wing beat, can produce, in the end, large results. In his book, Andrews gives the example of Norman Borlaug. Borlaug was an American scientist who in the 1950s helped to develop high-yield, disease-resistant corn and wheat. And in doing this, some credit Borlaug with saving an estimated 2 billion lives from famine in places like India and Pakistan. Norman Borlaug was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. In The Butterfly Effect, Andrews asked rhetorically, should Borlaug receive all the credit, or is the story more complex? Should, for instance, Henry Wallace, the one-term U.S. vice president who created an office in New Mexico to develop hybrid seed for arid climates and hired Borlaug to run it, receive the accolades? Or should we credit George Washington Carver, who took a young Henry Wallace for long walks and instilled in him his love of plants? Or should it be Moses and Susan Carver, who adopted the orphaned George as their son? And it goes on and on. Andrews points out how interconnected our actions are, creating an unforeseen butterfly effect that can ripple across time and space to affect the lives of millions. We tend to think that what we do and say doesn't amount to much. We are so small, what we have to offer is so insignificant. But what if we are wrong about that? What if what we say and what if what we do does matter, but we just can't see it? What if at the end of the day the world is either a little better off or a little worse off by virtue of our presence in it? And what if in ways that we might never understand, the world is counting on us to play our small part? John Pavlitz writes a blog. He wrote a moving piece about something he learned on the day his father died. He writes, "The day my father died, I was at the grocery store buying bananas, and I remember thinking to myself, this is insane. Your dad just died. Why the hell are you buying bananas?" But we needed bananas. We'd be waking up for breakfast tomorrow morning, and there wouldn't be any bananas. So there I was. And lots of other stuff still needed doing too. So over the coming days, I would navigate parking lots, wait in restaurant lines, and sit on park benches, pushing back tears, fighting to stay upright, and in general, always being seconds from a total blubbering, room-clearing freak-out. I wanted to wear a sign that said, "I just lost my dad. Please go easy." Unless anyone passing by looked deeply into my bloodshot eyes or noticed the occasional break in my voice and thought enough to ask, it's not likely they'd have known what was happening inside me or around me. They wouldn't have had any idea of the gaping sinkhole that had just opened up and swallowed the normal life of the guy next to them in the produce section. And while I didn't want to physically wear my actual circumstances on my chest, it probably would have caused people around me to give me space, or speak softer, or move more carefully. And it might have made the impossible almost bearable. Everyone around you, the people you share the grocery store line with, pass in traffic, sit next to at work, encounter on social media, and see across the kitchen table, they're all experiencing the collateral damage of living. They are all grieving someone, missing someone, worried about someone. Their marriages are crumbling, or their mortgage payment is late, or they're waiting on the child's test results, or they're getting bananas 5 years after a death and still pushing back tears because the loss feels as real as it did that first day. Almost everyone is grieving and worried and fearful, and yet none of them wear the signs, none of them have labels, and none of them come with written warnings reading, "I'm struggling, so be nice to me." And since they don't, it's up to you and me to look more closely and more deeply at everyone around us, at work or at the gas station or in the produce section, and to never assume they aren't all just hanging on by a thread, because many people are hanging by a thread, and our simple kindness can be that thread. We are all called to the business of small kindnesses, of planting seeds, and who knows where they will take root. You know the kind of thing that I'm talking about. A word of encouragement, a card, a smile for the weary cashier at the grocery store. Give your fellow human being the benefit of the doubt. Resist the urge to lash out when someone who is in a hurry takes your parking spot or cuts you off in traffic. Learn to see the best in people instead of cynically expecting the worst. Be gracious to the waitress who messed up your order. She's doing the best she can, and you're not perfect either. Refuse to question the character of another human being that everyone seems to want to run down. Offer a word of hope, and believe that the world is made better. The world is healed by your small kindnesses. Mother Teresa said, "Not all of us can do great things, but we can do small things with great love."
Oh, when the moon blooms like a flower in the night, petals of heaven born silver light, its seeds ride the wind